Thank you very much for joining us today. My name is Abu Qureshi. I lead the threat intelligence team here at BforeAI, and I'm joined by one of our extremely talented threat researchers, Rishika Desai. Today, we're going to be talking to you about the 2025 Online Travel Industry Threat Roundup. This is part of a series of research released by the PreCrime Labs team here at BforeAI, which is our threat research team. A series about the travel industry, the threats that industry and consumers are facing as a result, and our reports. Our reports consist of various activity that we've detected. We're going to talk about the travel industry as a whole, so including airlines, hotel bookings, online travel agencies, and sort of the threat vectors that have been revolving around these industries. Hand it over to Rishika to kick this off.
Thank you so much, Abu. So yeah, let's get started. We at PreCrime Labs, a research division of BforeAI, we thought of unraveling whatever is happening in terms of travel-related industry in the hospitality industry, and that led us to discovering 7,500 odd domains. That too, just in the first 3 months of 2025. I think that's interesting, Abu, because just in the month of December, we had found out 5,000 domains targeting the OTA industry. And comparatively, while this is the peak season, that led us to uncovering about 86 distinct brands across these three industries, and they were significantly targeted. Some of the ones were directly focusing on the consumer, on the end consumer, because they are the travel enthusiasts. They're looking for different either business opportunities in the travel industry, or they are looking at how they can get the best deal on the internet whenever they are planning their next trip. And because of which a lot of travelpreneurs have come up, a lot of coaching and mentoring has come up, and I think we can talk about that in detail in the further. But that led us to identifying not just your typical type of squatting scams, the traditional ones. We moved one step ahead that let us understand what are the unique set of threats discovered. I mean, one of the interesting things would be we saw a crypto coin targeting the OTA, the travel industry. So that said, the too good to be true deals and all are a part of these scams, but also we are going to look at something interesting which happened in this 3 months.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Rishika. I think the changes between, as you alluded to, between our last report and webinar until now is definitely striking. And like you mentioned, there's different kinds of trends and activities that contribute to these changes. And the uniqueness of the scams we discovered this time around was especially interesting, and we'll get into that later into the webinar as well. But the heightened consumer alertness for travel deals and travel threats in general, similar to any kind of online retail and e-commerce platforms, come in waves. And we observed very, very clearly that there was a distinct wave between that time frame.
All right, I'll just quickly discuss this one because this is my favorite section to talk about. Interestingly, as we have seen in our last one of the report of OTS, betting was not new. But this time we saw that cyber criminals were targeting airline industry, and they were prominently from Europe, US, and India, and they were offering fake giveaways. So if you could predict, let's suppose the fare of the next airline that's gonna go, you would be potentially promised of a reward. That was very interesting, and a lot of airline companies came to our notice with this particular trend. Following that, we also found out some websites where, let's suppose, certain practices do not align with certain set of people, and those people started encouraging or the consumers to start sharing their reviews on social media, or probably to sign up on their hacktivist led ideology. While this may or may not align with everyone, but brand gets significantly affected because of it. And some OTAs, which are really popular name, having their houses, having their operations across the world, could be at a significant risk. Airlines and hotels, both of them were targeted in this thing. Now, next one, it could relate a lot with many people, as many of us use social media, and this coaching thing is not new, coaching and mentoring. So that said, we also saw a rise of new coaches and new mentors who were trying to turn people with properties to potential travelpreneurs in this industry. Now that said, these formulas are categorized for us into quick money making formulas. May work, may not work. But again, our conclusion led to an understanding that not all such coaches could be trusted. Not all of the formulas might work. And this is something that companies in general should take a note on, as in where most of the listings are coming from, or even if these methods are verified or not. What do you think?
Yeah, that especially is very interesting because this travel coaching thing is completely new. I think rise of, as you mentioned, travelpreneurs and bloggers and travel bloggers and the whole social media aspect of it. I think that pushes this kind of narrative that you need a coach to figure out how you're supposed to travel and how to book all your vacations. So kind of like a travel agency, but a new age coach who's supposed to help you with that, and then the frauds that come from it. Another really interesting aspect that we noticed, fake visa services. So sites that are promoting visa consultations and electronic travel authorizations. So claiming to be helping you with acquiring visas, but actually stealing personal and payment data. And the sad part is that a lot of these countries that they're targeting uh, are where the people are desperate to acquire the visa, so they don't. Their security awareness is lowered and not heightened at that point because it's more urgency and I need this visa to book my travel. So in in um, in many areas of the world, we don't realize that this threat also exists. It's an added stress on top for the consumer and for the also for governments and enterprise who are being targeted in these scams. We also continue to see fraudulent accommodation platforms, large brands and OTAs like Airbnb, Booking.com, major providers there. That trend did not slow down at all. Um, and continuing with that, we saw a lot of support scams. So fake customer service, toll-free numbers to help you book your travel, and again, the lure being stealing, the lure being the promise of support for booking through and through ads on search engines, as well as leveraging on platform social media ads, leading to loss of um, data, as well as payment data and personal data. So we already talked about some of the too good to be true deals, some fake booking sites, which has been consistent, and then some new trends, as Rishika brought up, that were kind of novel. So we'll move on now to some of our key findings from our report.
From our report, it was very evident that out of the 7,000 domains that we have found out, 5,000 of them were newly registered travel related domains. And interestingly, about 95% of them were suspected to be malicious. And that comes out to be as a very interesting count. And here's a list of unique threats that we have seen. So, domain generated algorithms or domains that are generated with the help of algorithms are, I believe, is a trend that will not fade anytime soon, because one interesting example was that we found 17 domains having a similar domain pattern. Let's suppose changing only a few characters or alphanumerics, but you could predict the next pattern, right? So 17 of such domains were registered on the same day, and that's like one of the highest count that we have got. Secondly, we have found out AI based features. So some websites had AI in their domain names that could ideally link to chatbots or some AI related bookings or some sort of automation that a hotel might integrate, right? Again, that helped them with respect to the TLD as well, if it's there in the TLD. However, it was significantly present in the domain name. Recruitment campaigns is again nowhere to go, because we found out airlines and the cabin crew, which require a lot of training, right? So many domains regarding airlines were targeted with respect to recruitments. And one more interesting thing with respect to booking and travel related travelpreneurs, aspiring ones. So they were targeted for a small membership and by harvesting their personal data. And they were given a lure saying that you could become a travel agent like us, you could explore the world. So I think such unique keywords associated with travel creates an excitement which leads victims into giving into their sensitive information and some money. By the time they realize that they are not going anywhere, it's too late, I believe.
Yeah.
Lastly, it's about the third party maintenance providers. So, interestingly, we observed around 430 domains targeting Airbnb, and they also came with those third party maintenance keywords. For example, cleaning, maintenance, bookings, reservations, and other things, including those coaches and mentorships, right? So, any third party service as such were associated with the hotel industry largely. And I think that's one interesting insight from this report.
Yeah, absolutely. Some of the stuff you alluded to about the domain registrations coming from our report. Just to build on that, 95% of newly registered travel related registrations is especially interesting because when we apply our pre-crime engine and indicators to that, we are able to kind of make the combinations on those indicators and realize that and suggest that with high confidence that these are likely to be bad in the future. And we found clusters where there were elements that were active, and then there were elements that were getting prepped for future abuse. Luckily, we disrupted those campaigns, but the point is we look, those keyword combinations plus the timings. So if we're saying there's a travel peak coming, we're able to see at a certain time frame, 2 to 3 weeks before sometimes, that here's the spike coming now in the registrations. When the registration spike comes, the actors will start to prep the infrastructure, and then they will weaponize it as soon as the right time comes at the travel peak. So sort of consistent behavior that we see around threat actor behavior around the registration timeline and how we detect those pre-crime indicators early on. The use of, as Rishika alluded to, the use of the suspicious TLDs was also very standard and sort of the same TLDs we see being weaponized in other campaigns. And the TLD abuse history has been fairly common here as well. TLDs like .cu, .top, click, XYZ, shop, online, sort of the similar ones that we see in retail as a whole. As Rishika mentioned, there's an element of training where we see certain TLDs used more frequently. Then there's the element of e-commerce where we see things like .shop used more frequently. And then in crypto-related scams, we see .cu and .top come up very frequently. And then lastly, the infrastructure reuse. So we're seeing similar shared infrastructure across the campaign. Recently blacklisted ASNs, hosters, and IPs that have history for abuse or reuse of those of that infrastructure, which again is fairly consistent with what we see. Pre-crime red flags and indicators really helped put into context what these findings were for future malicious use and how we relayed that active content and active malicious use back to what we believe is coming in the future from these registrations. Did you have anything to add there, Rishika?
I mean, that reminds me regarding the top level domain of .click. It can also act as a call to action. If suppose there's this phishing email that goes to a consumer, and it could be like, if you don't click it right now, you're going to lose the deal, even if it's a travel package or something. And that acts like a psychological urgency where the victims are forced to click. Now, this reminds me the too good to be deals and everything. So it is always backed by some sort of significant global events. And this reminds me one of the significant events from this first quarter, which happened in India, the Mahakumbh Mela. the pilgrimage. So we could identify over 60 domains that were solely dedicated to hotel bookings. And if you could not find a hotel as real and existing property over there, the websites would randomly go as, okay, you can book a tent with us, you can book a bed with us, just a dorm with us. So I mean, that is one significant driving factor where we and even the brands or the hotel industry could focus on to that what is really driving these campaigns. And based on this, as we are ending with this quarter, we could also identify the early indications regarding the Hajj pilgrimage. So we could see a sudden spike in Saudi related airlines, Saudi bookings with respect to the hotels and other things. So I believe that is one of the events and another area where industries can focus at.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Those spikes around major global events, threat actors, obviously they want to capitalize off that. And another really interesting point is the frequent flyer programs. These programs for uh, flyers or customers of industry and travel industry and airlines, mostly airlines, where they have their own special sort of login pages. They have their own special portals where they can log in and look at things like which lounges are available and how much points they have on their card and what they can do with it. We saw a significant number of infrastructure being put up to replicate that as well, and I think that travel consumer is a good target for actors because they usually are not as I mean, they're used to having tailored and specific treatment. So when they see a new domain or a new infrastructure, a new link pop up, it's not uncommon for uh, a high roller to think that this is specifically for me. And they're very familiar with having support for a lot of their needs. So the support aspect comes back in there as well. Things we also saw a lot of domains relating to this with the stuff keywords like cleaning or reservation, bookings, concierge. Going back to that point where consumer convenience for travel, it becomes a really good lure for the actors.
I remember in last of our one of our reports, we also talked how if a person or a victim decides to book with a particular website, they were offering free Netflix subscription and free Wi-Fi credentials right when you do the booking. So again, this is linked to it, but again, a new way to look at it.
Excellent. Yeah, that's a good point as well. So we'll move on to some recommendations now, and the industry as a whole, I think it's a big target. There's the number of travelers, the number of bookings, the number of visits to this infrastructure is just and then the amount of reliance on online portals. Physical travel agencies obviously are not as common as they once were. So going to a physical person that you trust is not going to be a sustainable method for most travelers. So companies in the hospitality industry, they have to start looking beyond traditional booking scams where you're saying, I noticed a fake site that's offering tickets or reservations for my airline. It definitely goes beyond that now, and we talked about a lot of that in this webinar and in the report, where unconventional scams are becoming so common. Like as we just mentioned, the peaks around specific global events, the high flyer and luxury market, and then also the Airbnb specific and Booking.com specific scams, including tech support, customer service, etc. So point is that the old method of looking just at, here's a fake travel site and here's what I need to do to educate my consumers about not using these sites, it's definitely not enough anymore. We alluded to in the report and in the webinar as well that yes, we as defenders are utilizing predictive AI to catch these campaigns and this infrastructure before it goes live. But the attackers are also leveraging AI techniques on their own. So with these advancements, we cannot just rely on simple here's my brand name detected in typo squat, and that's it. I'm doing enough. It's not enough anymore. The campaigns are getting more sophisticated. The scale is getting larger, using DGAs and different kind of kits to very quickly spin up campaigns, using infrastructure that's quickly reusable and using infrastructure that in certain geographies is not compliant. So with all that said, the approach has to change, and it is, thankfully. And I think what a lot of brands, they obviously, we understand the risk to our customers and to us financially, but sometimes what's overlooked is reputational damage. As a consumer, would you continue to book your reservations on a site where there's a high amount of fraudulent activity happening targeting this brand? Maybe you will go to another airline. Maybe you will go to another OTA travel agency. Lastly, we also talked about how the early detection and early stage of this infrastructure is very common, because as we follow travel peaks, we follow, consumer behavior, the attackers are setting up their infrastructure in advance as well. And that is not only because of the peaks, it's also by design. When you set up the infrastructure, the attacker behavior and their motive is that let's lay low, avoid early detection, and then let's weaponize and launch our attack a little bit later on. And that really helps their ROI, because the earlier they get detected, the harder it is for them to use that infrastructure at all. So the attackers, we see this day in and day out, where they will use parked infrastructure. They will wait on the infrastructure. They will try their best to establish relevance and establish good reputation, to lower the chances of getting taken down and disrupted as much as possible. And those, we kind of alluded to it earlier as well, those indicators and those solutions that we talked about, using those behavioral patterns and understanding those indicators, that this set of activity makes it very likely that this infrastructure will be used maliciously in the future. When you understand that, it's very easy to combat and disrupt the attacks early, which is what PreCrime, as a part of its solution is, which is early infrastructure detection and disruption. So we're preemptively predicting this infrastructure is going to be bad, and we're preemptively disrupting it. So reducing risk for the brand, of course, and ultimately reducing risk for the consumers, and protecting people from accessing these sites and scams early on. You wrap it up, Rishika?
I mean, to be honest, this travel trend is not going to go anywhere year after year. Things are just going to improve and increase, and so has to be our detection patterns and our solutions, right? And we wish you a safe travel booking, I believe.